So the Honda Civic has been a long beloved compact car by many enthusiasts, around the globe, and especially here in the United States. And then you bring in the factor of movies such as The Fast and the Furious, and they just exploded in popularity. Now, they've always had a cult following, right? And there's going to be one of two things. You're going to either absolutely love these cars, or you're going to absolutely hate them. There's really no in between, Well, with that being said, it's long believed that the 7th generation is the worst and utmost hated generation of Civic. But why is that? Why does everybody hate the 7th gen so much? Well, today we're going to dive into why everybody hates the 7th gen. So when the 7th gen debuted in 2001, long lineage of awesome compact cars that people love to modify, love to make their own with unique designs, whether it was from bigger wheels, stanced out, slammed, body kits on it, wild paint jobs. Everybody loved them. The 5th and 6th gens were just adorned by millions. But what happened? When this debuted in 2001, long were gone the sharp, crisp, sporty lines and a beautiful design of the previous generations. Well, in my opinion, where they fell short on this one, for the people that hate them, is they tried to make it a sleeker design. They tried to make it more round. They tried to, pretty much make it appeal to everybody. And it didn't quite happen. They missed the mark. It fell short. They tried to appeal to everybody and ended up appealing to nobody. So there are a few of us that still love them, such as myself. But you kind of have to fall in love with it for reasons. Like me, it was just because I needed a small compact car that was fuel efficient. And with about 34 miles to the gallon on these things, you can't really complain, especially for a car that's 20 years old. Getting the same kind of MPG as a brand new car off the lot. No brainer, right? Well, not really. Well, now, another aspect where many car enthusiasts feel that the 7th gen Civic had come short, was the introduction of the D17. Now, it's not that it's slow by any means. I mean, relatively for a factory car, they're pretty quick. But it just quite lacked that sporty sound with the resonator that they placed in front of the air cleaner. They were just quiet. And upon revving the engine, it sounded dull. Like, it fell short of people's expectations. And they got pretty good pickup and go, especially if you have a VTEC. But they just lacked that sporty feel, that sound that people loved from the 6th generation. And, that means a lot, especially to a car enthusiast that loves driving their car. Put in one with a manual, and, you get plenty of that nice roar, that nice engine sound. But these were made to be commuter cars, not sporty. And in my opinion, that right there is where Honda fell short once again. Now, you can certainly liven that up by getting rid of that resonator and installing yourself an aftermarket intake. That really livens up the sound. That, coupled with a nice exhaust, so Why is it still hated? Well, the lack of, for a better word, aftermarket support. Now, those go hand in hand, right? If there's not a lot of people out there looking for, say, aftermarket heads, performance cams, all that kind of stuff that you're going to want to take and spice up this engine, so to speak, liven it up, give it a little bit more power. There's also going to be a lack of parts because, well, there's a lack of enthusiasts that want to actually work on these, that actually want to take it from a commuter to something that can compete down the strip on the track. So, one of the reasons why we have nobody to blame but ourselves, because, well, frankly, we're not interested in modding these cars. So why is somebody going to go spend thousands upon thousands of dollars into developing a product that, well, simply put, nobody's going to buy? Think about that. Now, what are the other aspects that fall short and actually got these cars a pretty bad rap? Was the automatic transmission. Now, this is Honda's fault. Simply put, Honda did not install basically a transmission filter that was serviceable. Don't get me wrong, they didn't install one, but in order to get it, you gotta pull that transmission and pull it apart to replace the filter. And at that point, who's gonna want to do that to service it? You know? So from, I believe it was 2001 to 2003, they were starting to develop transmission issues with the automatics. Again, another strike against the 7th gen. So with that being said, if you're looking for one of these and it has an automatic, basically look for the 04 to 05, because they put an inline filter from the cooler that can be replaced and serviced. The other thing I would suggest, if you do have an 01 to 03, install an inline filter in the car. And by all means, service your transmission. A lot of us forget about doing it. As simple as just changing the fluids when you're supposed to. That'll make these things live. Now, they do have problems, as with any other car. But if you do your maintenance, you should be able to get a long life out of these engines. Now, another aspect where many people feel that the 7th gen had fallen short was in the quality of the build. Basically, people thought it was cheap. And, well, they're not wrong. A lot of this has to do with the times. A lot of manufacturers were switching from, less environmentally friendly products to, well, more environmentally friendly. And with that, there is a learning curve to what actually works and what doesn't. So a lot of them are going away for different plastics and, stuff that was more environmentally friendly to produce. And, well, a lot of that has to do with the EPA. And going back to the fact that they no longer wanted to pollute our environment, which, let's all be honest, it's not a bad thing. Just some of the vehicles and some of the products started to suffer as manufacturers were learning to basically transcend into this new products. Now, let's take an example. One of which I own is the 2nd gen Ram. Everybody that knows Ram and knows the 2nd gens knows that basically the interior falls apart. And if you get one that the entire dash is basically, missing, you're gonna know. I mean, I had one work truck that basically you lifted up the dash cover and you could literally work on anything under the dash because the plastic was completely gone. I mean, just nothing. Like, say this were the Ram and you were to go ahead and lift up that cover, you could see everything under there. Made it easy to work on, but it's not something somebody wants to drive around. Now when getting back to the Honda, you know, of course, this really can't be used as a great example. I mean, she is 20 years old. She is an 04. But let's take a look at some of this. I mean, in my opinion, for being a 20-year-old car, it's kind of held up pretty good. Does it feel cheap? Like Honda gave up when they built it? Yeah, it does. But, I mean, everybody knows Honda for their reliability and for them to last. And yet again, the 7th gen fell short. I mean, look at this. Broken, will never stay in. You know, the quality of the materials. I mean, it's almost like the car was rushed. And, you know, Honda didn't care when they built them. Now, with the introduction of some, you know, competition to the market, such as Volkswagens and the GTI Golf, Honda had to come out with something better. And, well, I'm sorry, designers, but you fell short once again. Now, as you guys can see, my car is not really a great example. And before anybody says anything, no, this is not a manual. This is an auto. All I did was change the shifter. And to tell you the truth, a gear selector there is pretty ugly. So I just put a boot on it. And to prove the fact that she's an auto, not only seeing the transmission, but there's only 2 pedals. Now, one of the reasons why I cover that up is, for one, I think it's ugly. It was a really ugly design. This little cheap boot covers that up. I don't have to look at it. And everybody's gonna be like, well, how do you know what gear you're in? Well, Honda also put it on the dash. If you can see right there, it tells you what gear you're in. So again, Honda, why the redundancy? Why do I need to see it on both my dash and down here on the console? Especially when it's so ugly. You know? Wasn't needed. But, like I said, all these aspects continue to add up against the 7th gen. So why does anybody drive them? Well, now that's going to lean on to the positive side of the car. I mean, think about it. This car is an 04. She's 20 years old. Gonna be 25. Or 21, excuse me, because it's gonna be 2025. But the economy you get on these things is phenomenal for a 20-year-old car. I mean, this thing's getting 32 to 34 miles a gallon on the freeway. I can literally put $20 in here at today's prices of $4.30 a gallon. Yes, in California. And I can go just about anywhere. It's so cheap. And to tell you the truth, with a little bit of modification, it is actually a really nice car to drive. And like I said, you're gonna love them or you're gonna hate them. For us that own them, of course, we love them, right? But it's not without faults. So, that being said, the reason I first got one of these was not that I was looking for a 7th gen. It so happened that my wife found one for $800. And, well, I needed a fuel efficient car. And after working on the car and fixing that car up, I kind of started to fall in love, and just its simplicity. Now, in my opinion, and again, it's just my opinion, these are one of the easiest cars to work on. I mean, especially if you get rid of that bulky resonator and airbox, you have so much room. I mean, the starter literally is under the airbox sitting on top of the transmission. It's easy to get to. There are plenty of, well, let's not call them wing nuts, but wing bolts for loosening the belts. And it just makes it so much easier. You loosen a couple of nuts, twist that wing bolt, and guess what? Now your alternator's off. And now your power steering pump's off. And everything is easy to get to. I mean, yeah, you gotta take off some stuff to get from one to another, but that's with any car. So for me, that started the passion for the 7th gen. And yeah, I mean, in stock form, I believe they're hideous. Most of these, you're gonna find them with, steel wheels, and they're only 15s, and they're ugly. They came with hubcaps. Now you might find a couple, like with her when I got her, that had the factory alloys. Those were decent, but again, the wheels look like they just did not fit the car. So, went ahead and upgraded to some 17s. And like I said, with a little bit of mods, this actually is a pretty nice little car. And it makes it feel sporty. And you change that intake, again, you change that exhaust, and you get that nice little sporty sound to it. Now, I don't know about you, but running down the road, tunes blasting, sunroof open, and cruising down PCH by the beach with this little car that cost me pennies to get there, yeah, that's a win. So is the 7th gen the most hated generation? And does it deserve its reputation? Well, simply put, that's up to you.